Hello, and welcome back to the Sifted podcast. I'm John Thornhill, Sifted's founder and podcast host, and I'm delighted to be joined this week by Uljan Sharka, who has surely one of the most remarkable backstories in European tech. Uljan came to Italy in 2008 from Albania without knowing a word of Italian. He developed a fascination with tech, later worked at Apple in Silicon Valley, and is now the co-founder and chief executive of Domyn, the Italian AI startup unicorn which builds models and agents for enterprise use cases as well as AI infrastructure. We're going to be talking about how Domyn is trying to apply AI very differently from many other AI companies, the virtues of small language models, and how Europe has a real chance to compete against the US and China if it gets things right. Welcome to the show, Uljan.
Thank you for having me, John.
First, I'd love to hear about your personal story. Tell us, why did you leave Albania age 16?
Studies. So I was looking for a journey where I could study abroad, and this brought me to Italy. And then, I was completing my high school studies and ready to get to university, but this internship at Apple changed my life. Once I started there, this was the period when Apple was launching the iPad, and there was, I think, a peak of interest around the company. And that internship then eventually became a full-time job, dropping out of my plans for university.
How did you get to Italy in the first place?
So I got to Italy through Albania. So basically, this was, not an easy journey because back in the days, Albania was not yet in the Schengen group. Mm-hmm. So it was, a very, I would say, complicated experience. But studies, as you know, are something that Albanians pursue abroad, a lot in the UK as well. So my initial plans were to come in the UK, but then I happened to be in Italy, and that's it.
Okay, and how did you develop your fascination with tech?
So it started early on, already in Albania. I was literally trying to change every piece of technology that I had on my hands. So I was quite obsessed with gaming, but also any device that I was buying, from little radios to computers, I was trying to change them and to make them mine. I was fascinated by how all of this works. So beyond what I could learn at school, I wanted to put my hands into it. And I remember I created my own loading screen for my personal laptop back in the days, which had its own, logos and music, and this idea that you can actually teach the computer to do things. Back then was very basic, but still it was somehow expressing your desires. Was so fascinating that that brought me to dive deeper into it and turn it into my main passion.
And did you teach yourself to code, or did you study somewhere, or how did that work?
So during high school, I had the chance to hop on a program, which was a course for coding. This was the time where coding was becoming popular, and schools were starting, side programs for people to apply. And I did that. I had a very good professor who gave me a chance already back in Albania. This was as easy as, some basic programming of computers, or nothing special. But then after I developed a passion on it, I self-taught myself by spending nights and nights to build programs, small games, give it to my friends, get feedback, and that became an obsession eventually.
And how did that lead to you going to Apple?
So I started this job as a freshman, after high school to literally back up my finances. And it was just another job. But once I got in touch with the culture, once I saw, how this technology was put together and what it was starting to represent for people, and how much people were falling in love with the technology because it was enabling them to do things they were not able to do before. It was some sort of freedom realization that you could see in people's eyes and their passion for this technology. It got me so obsessed with the idea that these tools can change people's lives that initially I wanted to do it more and more at Apple. And at some point, I just decided to start a new company.
Mm-hmm. And what were you doing at Apple? What was your job there?
So I was helping large enterprises to adopt Apple technology in a time where management teams were trying to enable work out of office. So they were buying lots of iPhones and iPads so that people could connect to their email out of office securely. And iPads were being deployed, in broader operations. So engineers, for example, in manufacturing plants, they were leveraging these screens, to interact with machines in a new way. So that process envisioned companies not just buying these devices, but also integrating them in very sophisticated knowledge systems. And I was helping them to achieve that.
I've heard you say that you were quite struck by how incredibly smooth and sophisticated consumer tech is and how, frankly, pretty lousy enterprise tech is. Is that right?
That's correct. So we were, selling these hundreds, thousands of devices to each individual customer from time to time. And we were getting feedback that the iPhone was such a delightful experience. You can just turn it on and it works. And this was the time when Siri was being introduced. So you could ask it things like, not just how's the weather going to be tomorrow, but also show my next meeting in the agenda. And people were asking, like, why can I not do that with my work data? And that was primarily because they were trying to solve a problem, which was information systems at work were so complicated that they were creating a digital divide. So on one side, these organizations were spending lots of money to digitize. And on the other side, they were creating a gap because some of their best people could not use this because of lack of knowledge or because how complicated they were. So Apple was introducing to them an opportunity and a vision, which was simplifying access to that digital infrastructure, as easy as turning on an iPhone or asking Siri, how's the weather going to look like tomorrow? But we're not able to deliver that at Apple, being Apple a consumer company and not focusing on integrating, ERP data or CRM data.
So you returned to Italy, inspired by that kind of Apple genius, as it were, and you launched iGenius and Domyn, which became Domyn, back in 2016. What was the initial founding thought for your company?
So it was quite obvious to me by interacting with these clients that they were having a problem with this digital divide. So the more technology they were introducing in the enterprise, the more people were feeling uncomfortable because they had to learn something additional to their expertise, something new, and this was not easy for everyone. So this clear division between enterprise technology and consumer technology was part of feeding that problem because people were used at home to literally talk with devices. They were talking to machines after Siri, Alexa became a thing. Then they were going back to work and they had to learn these very complicated interfaces. So I saw that as a huge risk for society because it means that technology was not just an opportunity, but it was also not an equalizer anymore. It was actually enabling people that knew how to use it to become superhumans and everybody else left behind. So I wanted to close that gap. Coming from Albania, where we had civil war in 1997, a very complex social and economic environment, I had this feeling that technology was going in the wrong direction. It was actually dividing people instead of helping people to enjoy opportunity on a par. So this is what pushed me to start this company and to leverage this idea of AI, which was already solid back then, even though we're talking more than 10 years ago. And why I came back to Italy? First of all, because I just love Europe. I love to live in Europe, and it's part of culture, I guess. So there was a personal aspect to it.
And where is Domyn based?
In Milan, Italy. But the second part to it was that I strongly believe that in order to make technology human, you need to sort of start a renaissance, a digital renaissance, something that Italy has already done before in a different context. But I got obsessed with this idea that to solve the digital divide, we need a digital renaissance where we don't develop technology for the sake of it, which is what I was seeing in Silicon Valley, and I think is even more today with AI. But we needed an environment where people are valued more, people are central to everything, and then this renaissance could use technology as a tool to enable people.
And so you're very much kind of trying to ground the technology in specific sectors like finance and healthcare and government and so on. Can you tell us more about that? Give us some examples of what are the kind of use cases that you're helping customers use this technology for?
First and foremost, we're helping them to own it. We believe that there is no future with artificial intelligence where a few private companies own and control it, and everybody else is consuming it from them. So owning it means putting AI in a box, giving it to them, handing it over so they can control it and they can be sovereign. No remote switch, no dependency even on us at Domyn. Once we enable them to own it by literally transferring legal ownership into the AI models, then we give them a toolbox where they can build use cases. For example, we have clients in financial services that are building AI products out of their data, whether that is better risk models, whether that is dynamic pricing systems that enable them to price their products in a more efficient and personalizable way. Or when it comes to governments, we're helping them to digitize public infrastructure faster or to implement it in mission-critical areas like defense. So it's as easy as putting AI in a box and giving it to them to innovate software. So the main use case here is to upgrade old software, which is the operating system of governments and the private sector, into something that is more intelligent.
And what are the biggest challenges these organizations face when they're trying to adopt AI?
I would say security is the first one. So they don't want to hand over their data to a third party. They are dealing with very mission-critical information that is regulated to some extent, but to other extents it also creates systematic risk for society. So helping them with making AI safe is more important than the use case at the beginning. And once you have enabled that infrastructure, then it is possible for them to not just invent new things, but just improve what already exists. This can be, things like innovating front office. Imagine, those long calls with public administrations when you're trying to do anything from healthcare to, get a new passport. All of these things are frustrating. Talking to the government today is frustrating, and AI can solve for that. It can make the experience much more delightful, fast, and it can enable governments to actually make public resources available at scale.
Mm-hmm. Are there examples of companies that have used OpenAI or Anthropic models and regretted it that you know of?
I think there have been a few cases that are also public. I think it happened with Samsung that some of their patents at some point leaked to a public user of ChatGPT. There was another case where there was a public chatbot which sold a car for free at $0 because it was manipulated by an end user. And this happened because the company that was providing it had no control over the system. It was just handed over to them as an API. So as an application programmable interface where they could just put some rules, but they don't own that infrastructure. So these are examples of how these mission-critical use cases can be material for businesses and governments. Imagine if that same problem happened, in energy. National energy grid company that could potentially turn off an entire country just because of similar mistakes.
I saw an interview the other day with Alex Karp, the chief executive of Palantir, who made a very similar case, who was warning a lot of client companies that by working with proprietary frontier model companies, they were in effect transferring their business alpha to somebody else. They were making customers wanted control of their own compute, their own models, their own data stack, and their own alpha. And that's a risk if you use a frontier model, a proprietary frontier model produced by one of these big US tech companies. You would agree with that, I assume?
100%. This is the risk of disrupting the rule of law and intellectual property, because what keeps, the world fair today is that through the rule of law, we can enable freedom and everyone can enjoy of their inventions. But if with the current architecture of AI, those inventions are being transferred for free to a provider of AI, this is like feeding a beast. This is not just one entity or multiple entities, whether those are public or private, losing IP, but also reinforcing a monopoly that is going to be very, very hard to beat in the future, even for new ideas or new startups that can emerge in several areas of the economy. So this is a two-sided problem. On one side, you eliminate competitiveness for who's using decentralized models, as you just mentioned. And on the other side, you're eliminating freedom for the future because it's going to be very hard to beat, 5 or 10 companies that own the world's IP in every sector.
Mm-hmm. So that clearly has massive implications for sovereignty. Is that a big advantage, being a European company at the moment, the fact that there is so much focus on trying to reassert European sovereignty?
I think the short answer is yes, even though I don't like the idea of isolating ourselves as Europeans and saying us against, the US or other regions. I think we should fight for an integrated global platform that embodies European values for which we have been fighting, in terms of democracy, in terms of regulation. So we should not get in a trap where these values are now being weaponized against Europe itself. And I think we should keep it up with just pushing this in the right direction, and everything will just follow. This is my strong belief.
Mm-hmm. Who are your biggest customers at the moment?
So we have customers from different sectors, from the Italian government to leading manufacturing companies like Fincantieri, one of the largest shipbuilding companies in the world, but even US customers like Bank of New York or other banks in Europe like Rabobank in the Netherlands.
And what are they using your products for, your services for?
So they are getting an AI operating system to power better software for different solutions. Some of them we cannot even see because as part of our actually aim to enable sovereignty, we give them with the tools. We provide them the tools to actually build these use cases, but then they can do whatever they want with it.
What is your annualized recurring revenue at the moment?
So we have crossed the 200 million mark as of July 2026.
Uh-huh. Okay. And how ambitious are you for the company? How big do you want to get?
So our next big milestone is crossing 1 billion ARR, and that's going pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. When do you think you might hit that?
I think we're a few quarters away.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You're also working with on a frontier language model in Europe, Evropa. Can you tell us about that?
So you talked about ambitions, and 1 billion ARR is the next short-term milestone, but we believe there is a chance here to build a 1 trillion plus market cap company from Europe with global ambitions. So now, global ambitions means you need to be at the frontier all the time. Europa is exactly that. It's a consortium that aims to leverage a typical European partnership approach, where public and private companies work together to build open science and open technology. So Europa is tasked with the mission to build Europe's frontier open model. This is going to be a 1 trillion parameter plus model, equally representing over 24 languages and collaborating with 27 countries and working with their governments to source best-in-class data so that to make sure that this model is going to benefit all of Europe, but also be an open alternative for the world.
And who is in the consortium?
So we're leading it, and the other member is Fraunhofer, a German university, which has always been at the forefront of AI science.
And are you going to include other members in this consortium?
We're talking to other members, might be in the future.
Right. And how quickly do you think you could develop a 1 trillion parameter model?
So we have a hard deadline, which is 1 year from July, but we believe we can pull it off even faster. So it will depend on the results and how satisfactory the different training jobs are going to result. But we're fully focused on it, so you can rest assured that this is coming earlier than 1 year.
And it looks like people like Mistral have obviously were trying to get into the frontier model game and appear to be moving away from that because they realize it's very difficult to compete with these giant US companies with such enormous amounts of capital. So how are you going to compete?
We have a different vision from forward deployed engineers and this idea that you need to decouple technology from implementation. First of all, we believe that implementation should be done by the customers themselves with external support, but not outsourcing their tacit knowledge. I mean, asking them to outsource their data to centralized models and outsource their tacit knowledge through external professional domain experts literally means them being fully outsourced. So they would be just a design and engineering company, and they would have all of their supply chain and value chain completely outsourced. This This is unacceptable for the future of every economy. That's high risk. So the way we see it is that we can build vertically integrated AI systems that integrate anything from AI cloud, so the chips and the infrastructure, with the models and the application layer, and hand it over to our clients so that they can customize them for their needs. And this is exactly what we're doing. So we have been measuring this as a KPI for the company before starting to scale and accelerate our go-to-market globally. So we started with projects that required 6 months to implement in 2024, came down to 7 weeks in 2025. And as of today, we're able to implement an end-to-end mission-critical AI in just 2 weeks. And by the end of the year, we believe that's going down to 1 day. So this means that by focusing on a product-led deployment instead of a forward deployment engineer model, we're going to help our clients to implement this faster, bringing down the cost of implementation and having a faster time to value as well.
Who's in your team to develop this frontier model?
We have a very strong team with people that have been doing this before. Our CTO, Luca Antiga, he was one of the initial contributors of the core of PyTorch, which is the framework behind the AI revolution. We have key people, for example, our AI cloud lead was leading high-performance computing at ASML. Our domain experts as well that are leading the business and software solutions are coming from very reputable organizations. For example, for the financial services domain, we hired the head of investment AI at BlackRock, and many other people from several tier 1 financial institutions joined him in the process of building that team. I can go on and on, but the team is very strong and coming from key positions in the industry globally to enable this market leadership.
And how much do you estimate it would cost to develop a frontier model nowadays?
It's a minimum of 500 million euros and can go up as much as €1 billion for one version of it.
Which raises the interesting issue of financing. You've been talking about wanting to raise about $10 billion over the next couple of years or so in order to finance your ambitions. How are you going to do that?
So first of all, by being frugal and very diligent, we believe that the future is old. So anticipating time and trying to make these investments ahead of time can be an unprofitable decision. So the way we're doing it is by getting as much infrastructure and investment as we need for the goals that we have. Our goals right now are to continue build leadership in specific domains where mission-critical use cases are core. We mentioned finance, government, advanced engineering, defense, and we're getting traction from national security. So in these domains, we're integrating everything from the chip level up to the software interface. And we're even bringing domain experts to support that build-out. So it's not just AI engineers, but for example, in finance, it's quants and people that were on the other side of the table as clients before and that understand exactly how to build these use cases. So that is not very capital intensive. Of course, we're raising hundreds of millions, and I think we're progressing very well to get to that 10 billion number. This year, we're going to raise 2 billion. So 20% of that is going to be complete by the end of the year. We have already advanced at least half of that. And the other, 8 billion might happen in a few shots next year, considering how much traction we have been getting, especially after the export controls problem with Anthropic in June.
And is this equity finance, debt finance primarily?
It's a mix.
And who is backing you?
European investors and US investors. But we're also getting some support from the Middle East.
And can you name any names who are supporting you at the moment?
Not at this stage.
Okay. Is the European Scale-Up Fund likely to come in, do you think?
We would very much welcome that. So we're definitely going to explore having them on board. We believe they are not just, capital. They are more than capital. They are institutional leadership needed for companies like us to develop with a European core.
But do you think it's possible to raise that kind of size of capital in Europe? I mean, a lot of other companies have been struggling to raise that volume of money.
It's a lot about the business plan, right? So at the end of the day, finance is about numbers, not just vision and ideas. We believe that our numbers are going up very, very fast this year. We're getting massive growth. We're more than 20xing revenue. And I believe we're going to beat our plan this year by a lot. So as that growth takes place, raising 8 billion or more is not difficult.
Part of the application of that money, as I understand it, will also be for the Colosseum supercomputer, which you're building in southern Italy with NVIDIA, Vertiv, and G42. To what extent will that provide sovereign compute in Europe?
So to decode, the size of sovereign compute, I think we can start with this very specific insight from 2024 when OpenAI trained one of its models, GPT-4, with 15 times as much compute as all Europe combined. This is where we were in 2024. Since then, several initiatives have taken place, and thanks to the huge advancements that NVIDIA has been making with their chips, going from the Hopper architecture, which is also known as the H100s or H200 GPUs, to the Blackwell architecture. So that is a 20x increase in performance. So with similar amounts of energy, you can get 20x more calculations per second. So by deploying these next generation clusters, Europe has been closing the gap in the past 24 months. And is going to continue to do it with AI gigafactories, which is now an official program launched by the European Commission, and where we are actively participating as a major stakeholder. So I don't see compute as a problem in Europe as long as those initiatives keep going on. And I think they're going on with a smart approach. Of course, we need more compute, don't get me wrong. But I think the architecture of energy that Europe has will be natively compatible with the next generation of AI clouds.
Can you unpack that a bit?
So the next generation of AI clouds is not going to be about these big clusters where we need 1 gigawatt of compute in the same place. 1 gigawatt of compute is a lot of energy. So to put that in perspective, the world is consuming 4 terawatt of energy today. So 4,000 gigawatts. So of course, 1 and 4,000, there is a huge distance, might seem like a small number, but we're talking about the whole world. So having several AI companies aiming to build 1 gigawatt plus clusters means building supercomputers that consume more energy than certain countries. So what's going on with the next generation is that we're going to decentralize these supercomputers into small computers that are going to form what we call an intelligence grid, just like the energy grid. So you're going to have substations in the form of subcomputers being distributed at the edge, close to factories, close to specific research communities, close to towns that might be heavy users of that compute. And we're going to interconnect them to create a larger platform. And this is going to be possible thanks to the development of the next generation of AI models, which are going to actually not only be consumed through this distributed compute, but we're also going to be able to train them with distributed compute. So by changing that architecture, we're giving Europe a chance to participate with strength because Europe has one of the most stable distributed energy grids in the world.
Does that mean that Europe might be able to leapfrog the industry in terms of having more efficient models and more efficient compute?
Substantially. And bringing it closer to people with a more efficient approach thanks to this decentralized approach.
What does that mean for the valuation of these massive data centers in America?
We're going to see a lot of depreciation there, but given the gap between demand and supply, they're still going to be very relevant.
And what size is Colosseum going to be?
Colosseum aims to grow up to 1 gigawatt. So we're starting with a few dozen megawatts in the next 12 months. The first 15 megawatts are going live at the end of the year. And then we're upscaling from there. So we expect 100 plus next year. And then to complete our 3-year plan in 2028, we will get closer to that 1 gigawatt.
Where do you stand on the whole US proprietary model versus the Chinese open weight model debate? Who's going to win that?
I think this generation of models have reached a plateau of productivity. So I don't think we're going to have, an absolute winner. I think Europe, US, and China will be more or less on the same level. They're just going to use these models in a different way. So this is already happening with Google innovating search And, they very recently disclosed, I think yesterday, that they crossed 1 billion plus active users now on Gemini. So you can see how distribution can play a key and crucial role in that AI leadership more than the models itself. Europe is going to start getting more unicorns and decacorns thanks to the fact that these models are now reaching this level of productivity, and companies are going to start applying them to solve real problems instead of just continuing to research. Projects like Europa are going to close the gaps even at the frontier. So even for those ambitious startups that wants to be the Domins, the OpenAIs and the Anthropics of their own market. So we're going to have these equalizers from now to the next 15 months. So it's a lot going to be about applications and distribution, I believe.
Mm-hmm. And in what areas do you think Europe can compete when it comes to applying AI?
I believe that Europe itself is the biggest AI use case in the world, being it the most fragmented and inefficient economy by design. I mean, you have 27 countries with their own governance model, and then even though we have the European Commission in Brussels, we all know how inefficient the European model is by design. But this comes with pros and cons for democracy, as we know. So now, applying AI, which is a translator of complexity, to the most complex economy in the world, means elevating it even further, which means that if we are one of the largest economies in the world today, we're going to multiply that. So Europe is going to be the main beneficiary of the AI race in the next 5 to 10 years.
I'd never thought of AI optimizing the European Union, but that's an interesting idea. You were talking there about kind of startups across Europe. According to Sifted data, startups in Italy have raised 998 million euros this year, compared to about 25 billion for UK companies, 10 billion for German companies, and 6.8 billion for French companies. So Italy appears to be lagging quite a long way behind, but you've seen big success stories like Bending Spoons, who went public last month, and so on. Tell us about the Italian startup ecosystem. To what extent is it acquiring critical mass now?
I think there was an inflection point over the past 20 months with several companies crossing their Series A mark pretty swiftly, which means that they were able to raise, money for Series A, which has been something very critical in Italy until then. So with those Series A's, building a platform of startups that are now revenue generating with teams that are attracting talent also from abroad, not just developing, new talent in the country. We're now going to enter the Series B plus phase, which is where unicorns are born. So we're going to see many unicorns coming out of Italy because of that stage becoming mature in the next 2 to 3 quarters. Mm-hmm. This is already happening. And then, looking at stories like Bending Spoons or Domin is going to be a subsequent stage. So we believe that somewhere at the end of 2027, you're going to hear about the Italian ecosystem as much as you hear about the UK and the French ecosystem.
Who are the Italian soonicorns that we ought to be following at the moment?
I'm not going to comment on that because I think the market is very dynamic, but there are very good candidates that I know directly myself racing for that status, and I'm sure they're going to achieve it.
Mm-hmm. And one of the kind of continual complaints about Europe is the difficulty of raising money and raising that kind of growth capital. Is that now available in Italy and you think Europe?
Not enough. I think we're lacking strong lead investors who price companies in the right way, because pricing is critical to building a healthy, competitive startup ecosystem. Because what happens nowadays is that we have great companies, but these are priced 10x or 20x less than their competitors overseas. And what happens is that they either are being purchased and acquired at discount, or they're not able, because of the size, to compete and stay competitive in the process. Mm-hmm. So having initiatives like the Scale Up Fund that take some of that pricing risk and that try to equalize the market is going to be critical for Europe to be competitive beyond the decacorn phase. Because I think now we're talking decacorn, we have some companies crossing the 20 billion mark, but if we want 100 billion plus businesses in Europe, we need more initiatives like the Scale Up Fund.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Some quick fire questions. What's the biggest problem in enterprise tech, and how do you solve it?
It's software. Software sucks. Software is the operating system of the world, and it still doesn't work. I think over the past 20 years, every promise in enterprise technology was broken because of system integration. We didn't manage to build platforms that talk to each other and that enable real platforms. We do not have real platforms in the market today. We just have small pieces of software that are siloed, that are micromanaged in their own domain of expertise. And integrating this is extremely expensive. And as they keep evolving continuously, it's a never-ending process. So there is an estimation of that inefficiency. The Consortium for Information and Software Quality in the US estimates that the US is losing more than 2.3 trillion every year because of the bad quality of data and bad quality of software. We estimate a similar number in Europe as well. So there is a 5 trillion low-hanging fruit use case for just transforming apps into super apps or software into software that works.
Isn't there a danger, though, that AI will contribute to that problem rather than solve it if we get an amassing of kind of technical debt of people using AI, creating software in bad ways?
That's not going to happen because of the nature of AI. AI has been created with a more scalable approach, automated approach, where system integration is solved by default. And this is true for AI agents more than for AI models. AI models are raw material that you still need to refine and you still need to build it into a product. AI agents are the future of software. You can think of it like software 3.0. So the biggest use case nowadays for AI is just building a better version of software in the form of AI agents. And these AI agents can talk to each other with a universal protocol that eliminates the need for system integration. And this is why we do not believe in the forward deployed engineer approach, because that is basically a patch, a middle software that we're building instead of just renewing the whole stack and going fully AI native. That's going to be less expensive and more efficient.
But we've had a lot of examples of agents actually talking very badly to other agents. And so how is this system integration going to take place spontaneously?
Because those agents, we're employing them to do work that they're not still ready for. Mm-hmm. So if we want agents to be productive, we just need to upgrade software and not just try to build digital gods that replace humans. In fact, I think the biggest lie in the AI industry right now is that agents are going to replace jobs at scale. They're going to make jobs more efficient, and as a consequence of large-scale automation, of course, we're going to have some of those jobs being automated, but not at scale and not at the level that is being discussed. I mean, I keep hearing that 50% of white-collar jobs are going to be disrupted within the next 6 months since 2 years now, and that hasn't happened, and it's not going to happen anytime soon. But we're going to have, superhumans, because thanks to the domain expertise augmented by these AI agents and software that works, people are going to be able to deliver 100x more work done than before, especially knowledge workers.
Only if we get that software transition right, though.
Yes.
Okay. Who's the European founder you most admire?
I would say most recent moves as well. I think the founder of Revolut is quite impressive. The way he's thinking of the business and the way he's building the company, and also the culture and recognizing the team for what they've been able to achieve. So I think he's quite a good example for Europe.
Okay. And what's the most important personal attribute for a founder?
I was going to say leadership, but I think it's teamwork. Working with the team and actually doing the job alongside the team is the most important quality, I believe. Because nowadays we have this idea of founders just giving orders, and there is no such thing as a one-man company. It's just the biggest lie.
How do you build teamwork at Domyn?
Literally working with the team. There is no difference between the founder and the rest of the team. We're all co-founders, and people joining are becoming co-founders of the business as well. So if you don't have that same level of ambition, if you don't have that alignment in frequency, we're not building a company that is going to change the world. So we want everyone to be an entrepreneur at the company, and we demand for that level of ambition across the company. And a lot of people have been talking about these flat organizations, but governance that has been set in these companies does not allow for that flat organization to really take place. So I've been putting a lot of effort at the company to enable that level of empowerment across the board, enabling everyone to play a role at the company. And I think teamwork is being underestimated and founder mode overestimated. The company will never work and achieve such goals without teamwork. So there is no such thing as founders doing it all.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Uljan, for a great discussion. Uljan is one of the many leading European founders who is speaking at the Sifted Summit at the end of September. Do check out the details on the Sifted website. And as always, please rate, review, and share this podcast. This episode was produced by Maya Darampal Hornby.